Hello there, I'm Chuck Todd, and welcome to another episode of Meet the Press Reports to round out our 3-episode series focused on threats to our nation. Today we're diving into a resource vital to our security: water. In February, a water treatment plant operator in the small town of Oldsmar, Florida, noticed someone remotely accessing the computer system he was charged with monitoring.
The hacker changed the sodium hydroxide from about 100 parts per million to 11,100 parts per million. The sodium hydroxide, also known as lye, is the main ingredient in liquid drain cleaners.
A hacker, in a matter of moments, was able to essentially poison the town's water supply while they watched. With no nationwide cybersecurity standard for the country's tens of thousands of water systems, a simple push of a button could have had potentially catastrophic consequences for an entire community.
These kind of bad actors are out there. It's happening. So really take a hard look at what you have in place.
The good news is that lye never made it into Oldsmar's water, but the scare exposed a real nationwide threat, and one that is coming from multiple directions. As most Americans take clean drinking water for granted, the reality is this resource is not so secure. We're going around the country to take a look at the multiple threats that could jeopardize our ability to turn the tap and have safe, clean water come out of it. In Flint, Michigan, the community is still dealing with the effects of lead-contaminated water almost a decade later. In California's Central Valley, droughts that affect well water access are increasingly common and more extreme. And in Jackson, Mississippi, the city's aging infrastructure makes it so that some cold weather can shut off water access for weeks. And that's where NBC News reporter Deepa Shivaram kicks off our report.
We were without water, without running water for over 2 weeks. That means we had to transport water just to flush the toilet, to do everything.
In February, Jackson residents like Barbara Howard turned on their taps and nothing came out. And now, over a month later, they're just coming out of a boil water notice.
I don't even feel comfortable drinking it filtered through the refrigerator at this point. So I'm using bottled water to drink all the time. I'm also using bottled water to cook and to brush my teeth.
Extreme winter weather pushed the city's aging water infrastructure beyond its breaking point.
Basically, the system crashed.
Jackson Public Works Director Charles Williams told me 2 unexpected winter storms caused pipes to burst from freezing temperatures, leaving residents with no water at all. But with the city's aging system, it was only a matter of time.
We've got lines in the city that are over 100 years old. From an engineer, I always knew, right? But sometimes it's difficult for the public, the politicians, and everybody else to fully grasp what you've been trying to articulate for a number of years, that we really need to address this.
But not all residents were impacted in the same way. The city's predominantly black and low-income neighborhoods were the ones left dealing with dry taps for weeks. All right. A problem experts say is not unique to Jackson.
It's almost like a type of infrastructure racism, where communities of color, immigrant communities, poor communities are denied access to adequate and resilient infrastructure, and it breaks over and over and over again.
In at least 545 municipalities across the country, there are cast iron pipes that are now more than 100 years old. The aging infrastructure has led to a point where a water main breaks somewhere in this country every 2 minutes.
When you look at other communities that are similar like Jackson, yes, we're all struggling. We're all trying to find available funding to put toward this infrastructure that it continues to age every year. You know, it doesn't get better. You know, it gets worse.
We need state and federal resources. Our budgets are not sufficient enough to cover replacing an entire water system.
Investment in water infrastructure has increasingly fallen to state and local governments over the past few decades as costs to fix the systems continue to rise. But for a city like Jackson, where nearly 30% of residents live in poverty, people can barely afford to pay their own water bills, let alone increase taxes. And in the meantime, residents like Barbara still don't trust their own tap water and are already bracing for the next time it runs out.
I was hoping that, we would be back to using the running water by now, and it doesn't seem like we're getting back there.
This is Ann Thompson in California's Central Valley, where water is the new gold. As the state and Jesus Benitez face a second consecutive dry year.
This year, it's not raining enough.
He knows that means his sketchy well could quit for a third time. 73 years old, he's not sure he can carry 5-gallon jugs like before.
The old way, fashion way, shower with a bucket on it. And put some water on the toilet and everything.
Even more frustrating, Benitez lives right next door to a municipal water system that could save him. An emergency connection rescued Melinda Matheny and her mother-in-law when their well ran dry in 2015.
I've always looked at water as an afterthought, but water is life. It's a human right to have access to water.
But here in the Golden State, not everyone does. The EPA says more than 1 million people are without access to clean water. Some here in the vast but sparsely populated Tulare County. Nearly the size of Connecticut, Tulare is home to just 500,000 people. And that is a problem, says County Water Resources Director Denise England.
When the state looks at allocating money to solve water problems, they want to solve water problems for lots of people. And we don't necessarily have the lots of people, but for those people it matters.
Add to that the visible strain on water resources in an era of climate change. Here where I'm walking was the lake that gave Tulare County its name. Once the largest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi, today it's farmland as far as you can see. Where rivers ran, now dust. NASA satellite images show how California's groundwater supply was depleted from 2002 to 2014. In the Central Valley, which provides a quarter of the nation's food, experts say agriculture is pumping so much groundwater, the land is actually sinking, damaging infrastructure, even reducing the flow in canals carrying water to L.A. Yet farmers like John Dolieslagger face agonizing choices: to keep his thirsty walnut trees or opt for more drought-tolerant pasture.
So you might come back to visit me again this time next year, and these things may be gone.
After California's third driest winter, getting only half the annual rain and snow it needs, its golden glow may yet again be parched.
This is Priscilla Thompson in Flint, Michigan. 7 years after the water crisis in Flint began, people still line up for bottled water.
The water that's coming through the taps is, personally, that's still not good to drink.
I'm not going to feed my kids or my grandkids or my dog, and neither. No.
This church is one of 3 help sites in Flint that still distributes thousands of bottles of water per week. And folks start lining up as early as 5 a.m., hours before sites open, to get it.
Every day that we replace pipes, you rebuild a piece of trust with those individuals.
Sheldon Neeley was sworn in as mayor of Flint in 2019. 5 years after officials changed the city's water supply to the Flint River, which caused corrosion in the pipes and high levels of lead in the water. For years, officials denied there was anything wrong until 2016, when state and federal officials declared a state of emergency.
We have a crisis in confidence in this community that we still have to overcome.
Residents like BERNADEL Jefferson say they continue to live this crisis every day. Jefferson's grandson is one of the city's thousands of kids still dealing with the effects of drinking lead-contaminated water, which can include behavior and learning problems, hyperactivity, among other issues. In 2016, she took her story to Capitol Hill.
He was an AB student. Today, we got his report card before we left Flint. He has 3 Fs. 3 Fs on his report card because he can't concentrate, he can't think. So yes, I care about the children in Flint, Michigan.
How is he doing today?
He had to go to an alternative school to get his grades up because he didn't have the assistance and the tools that he needed to educate him.
Our grandson died, and they still don't know why.
Daniel Moore is the pastor at Shiloh Baptist Church in Flint.
They took his brain tissues to University of Michigan. They still don't know why he died at 6 years old, born during the water crisis.
Recently, a federal judge approved an initial $641 million settlement for residents impacted. But many say that's not enough to address the long-term effects of drinking the bad water.
What's going to happen in 5 years? What's going to happen in 10 years? Is there going to be help for our children? Is there going to be money to meet the need for our children? No.
This year, 9 people were indicted on 41 counts related to the Flint water crisis, including former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. Snyder is charged with 2 misdemeanor counts of willful neglect of duty. To date, no one has been held personally accountable for what happened in Flint. What does that mean for a resident here who lived through this to see that?
Yeah, for a city like Flint that's primarily African American, they see it the same way as they see police brutality. When do we get justice? Justice
in a community that many feel will need generations to recover.
A lot of people feel the same way I do. You know, I feel like we just got passed over.
And joining me now is ERIN Brockovich, a longtime environmental activist, and she's author of the book Superman's Not Coming, Our National Water Crisis and What We the People Can Do About It. She's also the publisher of the Brockovich Report. It's a newsletter aimed at educating Americans about the water crisis, which is what we're trying to do right here. And ERIN Brockovich joins me now. It's great to have you on. Frankly, it's a privilege to interview you. I'm glad to have you here.
That's very nice to say. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Happy Earth Day to everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Let me start with what you write in the book. Very simply, Superman is not coming. If you're waiting for someone to come save you and clean up your water, I'm here to tell you no one is coming to save you. That's pretty grim. And I say this, I understand that no one's been coming. But I guess the question I have with you, don't we need somebody to play the role of Superman here and clean up this mess?
Well, you know, Superman's not coming does sound grim, but here's the thing, you're here. And I was watching some of your interviews before and what happened in Flint, Michigan, and those mothers that rose up, they become the voice, they become Superwoman, and they are it in that community. And they get in there and, you know, first of all, we have to work on not letting these things continue to happen. But in Flint, moving forward, they will now be the ones that get involved, that will change laws, that will change policies, that rise up and fight for clean water. So for me, Superman's not coming's never been frightening because, see, we're here. And that's the difference. We're recognizing that we're here and have a voice.
So when you've gone through this, where did this sort of come apart? You know, we were moving in one direction where it seemed as if we realized, hey, lead is bad, so we need to get it out of our schools, get it out of our paint. We worked on that. We did. And then all of a sudden, it seems as if everything stopped. And in some ways, we've gone backwards on our infrastructure, particularly with water. Why?
Well, there's a whole lot of reasons why, you know, kicking the can down the line, putting, you know, profits over safety and taking shortcuts, not on the upfront, and just pushing it on down the line. We've had system failures for a lot of reasons, erosion of antiquated systems that we have not wanted to address. And when I talk about antiquated systems and infrastructures, I'm talking about laws and policies, and there's just been all kinds of cover-ups and deceptions and corruptions that have eroded the system over time to where you're just seeing a huge explosion of it.
What are your expectations of this Biden administration, and what's a marker that you're going to look at that says, okay, they're making progress?
Well, yeah, I am watching the administration, and I think it's really, one, important that the conversations start being had and really doing something with the conversation and looking towards solutions. We have serious infrastructure and water issues in this country. And we've got to, one thing that I think is there's a gigantic disconnect between federal and who's running these issues down to state, and disconnect from the people. And we need to be on the ground. I would like to see the new administration have EPA and these agencies that are in charge of protecting our water, that are going to be rebuilding our infrastructures, working with the people. No one knows better than those families in Flint or in other polluted places. Yet we don't talk to them and we don't learn from them. And this current administration, I hope that they will start doing just that.
Look, you're basically, to me, best known for when nobody was there to ask the questions, you went and asked questions. So there are going to be people watching this, and I know you've said this to others, who are going to think, I think my water system's a mess, but I don't know. What would you advise people? Because you make the point how frankly, how much education we lack when it comes to where did we get our water?
Well, you know, I have so many families and communities come to me, and you know what? You need to rely and believe in what it is you're experiencing. They send me dirty water photos. You know that the yellow water, the green water, the orange water, the black water, the brown water, something's wrong. Make a phone call. Don't be afraid to take some action. Pick the phone up and call the municipality. And women in particular are really good. They know if someone's not telling them the truth. Actually, have a conversation with your neighbor. Are they experiencing the same thing? You can get on this amazing Google that we all have. Put in your zip code. Oftentimes, you'll be surprised what you find out by just asking a question. Don't be afraid to ask a question. And so what if you're wrong? And here's something really important. You've got an issue in your community, show up at your city council. Half the time they're there, no one's there. They don't know what's going on. So you make the initiative to stand up and show up. That is the first thing that you can do. Just take that step, make a phone call, and get involved.
So finally, when it comes, what is your biggest concern on drinking water? Is it the access, or is it our ability to provide it, just access to basic water because of climate change, or ability to provide safe drinking water?
Both. We have lead contaminations from antiquated aging infrastructure that are going to have to be addressed. We have climate initiatives and issues at hand. And let's talk about climate change for a minute. It's going to be water events. You got the oceans rising. You're going to have too much water, too little water. We have aquifers running dry, aquifers polluted. It's a big issue. And one of the first things that we can begin to do regarding our municipalities and our drinking water is make sure our municipalities are funded and they have the filtration systems that they need. We're going to have to get in and address our failing infrastructures once and for all and get rid of antiquated pipelines and support the fact that our water is life, and all of us are going to have to work hard to change policies, laws, and make sure our municipalities are funded.
It's a basic need we all have to have, which is drinking water. Here's hoping it's the one thing government can get right at some point. ERIN Brockovich, thanks for coming on and sharing your perspective with us.
Thank you. It's the one thing that both sides of the aisles need to work together on is our water.
Hear, hear. And speaking of that, how does the Biden administration plan to address this water crisis? The Deputy National Climate Advisor for the White House, Ali Zaidi, joins me next. Welcome back. The Biden-Harris administration has said a lot of the things activists want to hear right now, particularly when it comes to the issue of water.
For years and generations and centuries, wars fought over oil. I would suggest to you in a short matter of time, wars will be fought over water. We must understand how precious this resource is. We must understand the equities and inequities of distribution and access to clean water, especially clean drinking water, and address it.
For more on the Biden administration's plan to tackle what many believe is a national water crisis, I'm joined by Biden's Deputy National Climate Advisor, Ali Zaidi. Ali Zaidi, welcome to Meet the Press Reports. And I want to start with that. ERIN Brockovich, who's the author of the book, Superman is Not Coming, refers to this as a crisis. Do you concur that the issue of access to clean drinking water in this country and water in general, are we at a crisis point?
Absolutely, Chuck, and it's good to be with you. What we're seeing in our communities is really a number of crises intersecting. We see the crisis of racial justice. We see the crisis of economic opportunity not reaching. And we see an environmental crisis, one that impacts folks' public health. So it's time, long overdue, that we take the action necessary and lean into the opportunity that it presents.
You know, it's interesting. One of the arguments that activists are making, including ERIN Brockovich, is that the federal government, just whether it's they don't have the resources to deal with it or whether they don't want to deal with it, that many of these communities don't have the help they need when it comes to the guarantee of clean drinking water, whether it's in Jackson, Mississippi or Flint, Michigan. Is this on the federal government or is this on cities and states to be maintaining this?
Look, everybody's got a responsibility here, but what President Biden has laid out in the American Jobs Plan is the federal government doing its piece. It's investing $111 billion into water infrastructure, investment that's going to create good-paying jobs. And at the same time, we've got to focus on the concentrated challenges, the unique challenges faced by unique communities. And you mentioned one of them, lead service lines. The president's committed $45 billion in the American Jobs Plan to take out lead service lines, period, full stop. No more excuses. Time to get it done.
Okay, but another issue we run across, and this is an issue in California, is that those that have the hardest time accessing clean drinking water, they don't live in a large community. And a lot of times the focus of infrastructure fixes are, okay, how do we help the most people at once? So this inequality issue, sometimes it can be on racial lines, but sometimes it's on geographic. How do you fix this, and how do you plan to address it?
Yeah, Chuck, the question of place is really critical as we think about water. One, we've got to reach those hard-to-serve areas, whether it's rural communities or tribal or insular communities. You've got things like arsenic in rural water systems. We got to address that challenge. And we also got to think about place in a different way. You know, it's not just the water infrastructure of the main lines. We've got to focus on the service lines. We've got to recognize that for hundreds of thousands of schools and child care centers, we've got lead pipes running through there. So when a kid steps up to the water fountain, they're exposing themselves to a toxin. So place is critical, and we've got to be really attentive to making sure this investment reaches all of the places so that this is a right that can be enjoyed by all Americans.
All right. Now, this issue of water also impacts the agricultural sector. That's a part of our look in California. And of course, you know, people in Southern and Northern California have done their part during the drought, but the issue is still how much water the ag community uses and needs. Are we going to have to address farming in a different way and basically tell farmers, hey, you can't grow those crops here because it takes too much water to have those crops? Or is the federal government going to be paying people to grow things that are more inducive to saving water?
Three answers to that. The first is innovation. We're seeing more and more technologies advance in the agricultural sector, things like precision agriculture, which reduce input costs, they reduce water consumption, and they actually reduce emissions as well. So we have to invest in those technologies, improving the cost curve, and getting access to that technology to a greater share of the agricultural sector. The second answer is investing in our natural solutions. We've got to recognize that nature can be our friend in tackling the challenges that climate change presents, whether it's investing in things like the restoration of wetlands or it's supporting our communities out west. And the third piece is, you know, this central infrastructure that helps us reuse water that helps us treat it, recharge aquifers, technologies like desal. So we've got to invest in all of that, in the innovation, in the natural solutions, in the infrastructure.
Look, you've made a lot of promises that people want to hear. Let me ask you this, for somebody that lives in Flint, Michigan, by January of 2025, and you guarantee they're going to be drinking clean water out of their taps.
This is the deal. We passed the American Jobs Plan. We put $111 billion into the system, leveraged multiple times, addressing the crisis that this nation faces, and creating good paying union jobs for plumbers and pipe fitters and for the whole supply chain. That's the deal. That's the plan that's on the table, and we think it's urgent, necessary that Congress take the steps to advance that proposal and get us going on this work.
Well, I get you don't want to commit to any timeline there, but I know the folks in Flint are hoping that you meet that timeline and then some. Ali Zaidi, the Deputy National Climate Advisor, thanks for coming on Meet the Press Reports.
Thanks, Chuck.
And that's all we have the time for today on Meet the Press Reports this week. Thanks for being here. Join us next time when we look at the human side of the immigration debate. We're the people giving up everything to try to cross our southern border. And how has the debate over asylum laws failed them? I'll see you next week here on Peacock and every Sunday on Meet the Press. Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.